Warning, the following is simply an account of my first attempts at painting something so small. This is not an attempt at an instructional video. There are plenty of well-qualified painters on this platform to help you learn the techniques in this video that I currently enjoy butchering. That said,
my character has pointy ears which help it see in the dark.
Sorry. What I meant to say is that this video contains no
silly voices.
This video contains no instructions. What is wrong with these people? Hello, Night City! Today I'm going to try painting a Necron Immortal and using a couple of new techs. Here's a couple that I started and just wasn't happy with. The paintwork was rushed, and the paint I used was really thin. So I'll grab one of these pre-prime models, some I 3D printed, and get to work. Oh, you guys okay? Today's another day of firsts for me. My last project, the Megafauna, took forever to make. As a result, the video I planned started to get pushed back further and further as I sculpted it and had to wait for stuff to set up. This is the first time I had to pivot and make a whole different video, one I hadn't planned on but enjoyed nonetheless. And just like magic, my magical baking tin gave me these 4 paints. Now I just need my paint handle. That's glue. Try it again. That's a fan. One more time? Maybe? Nope, keep going. Here we go. Now I just needed to load up my wet palette, not pictured by the way, and grab a model to paint. Yeah, that's it. On the topic of first, this is the first time I'll try wet blending, and using it to attempt a Zenithol Highlight, another first. Caveat being that at the time of recording and due to schedule crunch, I only had a white primer on hand. So I had to YOLO and do things without the aid of a darker primer. I'm by no means a mini painter. Props and stuff I can do, but for the first time I found myself Wait. Hey little guy. Oh. Alright. Anyway, I found myself shooting video with a process I used to get this little guy table ready, or at least make an attempt to. One hard lesson you'd have to learn is that when you start something new, you're going to fail. A lot. The trick is to keep failing until you can't fail any further. This means you've learned what not to do, and you can apply that to what not to do next time. So for this adventure, and just to set the floor for myself really high, I opted to handicap using just these 4 paints. I won't be allowing myself any washes, and my edge highlights will be done in the silver gray that I grabbed. It's kind of an off-white gray mix that makes blending hard by way of making the pigments and other paints very pale. When you're at the level I'm at, absolute beginner, I find that throwing yourself right into the deep end is a great place to start. I can learn faster using a sink or swim mentality, and if it doesn't work out, I can always start over. Largely, the bulk of my army is going to be this Somebody help me out here, please. My army is going to be this scarlet color. There. Now, I mentioned earlier that I 3D printed some of these immortals. I had leftover arms and heads that would have been a shame to let go to waste, and would have really hurt considering the price these kits go for. For the same $40, I could have picked up 2 new Gundam high-grade kits, but I would have then deprived myself of a potentially social experience, and I wouldn't have been able to support my local game store. Hit like if you want to see a well-thought-out list of reasons to 3D print and to not 3D print your 40K models. At any rate, I used this gunmetal blue to start with the parts of the skeleton that would stick out underneath the armor. I opted to not gap fill the shoulders because in my mind, this guy was healing from an intense battle, and since Necrons come from a planet bathed in solar radiation, I figured that a mostly red color could sell that, I think. I did end up going back over spots here and there and just let my brush do the work. Since I have unsteady hands and subject to tremors in my right hand specifically, I wasn't too worried about going out of the lines. After all, a lot of these details are really small, and panel lining could have been easier for me with a drip type panel marker, though that had been cheating on my own challenge. Another concession I had to make, since life happens and I have obligations, was cheap Walmart brushes. You might see this during the video that a lot of these tips split and lost some bristles. It wasn't enough to ruin the paint job, but it was still something to consider. I do own a few Citadel synthetic brushes, but at $7 a pop, I'd have expected better since they lost bristles more than my cheap Walmart brushes did. Could have been a fluke that a few bad ones slipped through QC, so I'll forgive them for the time being. At this point, I wanted to start my shadows and blending. A simple paint scheme would have been good enough, but I wanted to keep pushing. At one point, I even got some advice from Nick at CC Minis and Narb of Narb Makes Fame, as well as a few other Discord people in my DMs who were all of the same mind on my paint work. See, I thought I'd pushed way too hard on the paint, and it just didn't look the way I wanted it to. I wanted the MIDI to look like it was bathed in the glow of a nuclear twilight, but all I'd done was make it look like someone splashed red paint on him for walking into a KFC. The general consensus was to push harder and exaggerate what I had already done. I was up to the challenge, and my end result was a lot more appealing, which, of course, you'll get to see later on. Nick even went on to suggest a green glaze, but given the time I had to get this video done, I had to hold the glazing practice in between projects and work. I'll be learning and working on it, and hopefully I can show you all the results sooner rather than later. Well, those of you who want to see it at least. In making my army stand out from other Necrons that seem to use the same green, I tried my hand at a blue OSL using that same medium blue. It didn't go as planned, but I think this OSL came out a little bit better than my previous attempts. That's another thing I'll keep learning and pushing on as well. Leave a comment if you have any advice. I continue to think about where the light would hit and how it would hit. In a weird way, I guess I was starting to think about non-metallic metal. I'm not sure I got the look down, but since I wasn't after it, it didn't really matter to me. I was able to keep in mind that the Mini needed a certain level of what I consider to be overpainting in some areas. I mean to say that layering and layering until dark and light blended. Having seen Miniac's video on wet blending, I tried to use what I learned there to start working on my Zenithol Highlights. And then this happened. This was the moment I kind of saw the light. In an effort to stabilize my hands, I was pressing my pinky in various locations. At some point, I had used the rifle as a means of stabilization a bit too much, and, well, rip. Talk about a pain in the neck. I spent about 2.5 hours painting this one Mini, and I hadn't realized it since I was in a total zen state. Any of the stress, anxiety, depression I had at the time started to fade away, unlike when I worked on the Megafauna, which was just stress and anxiety the entire time. The Zenithol work didn't come out how I wanted it to, so I kept going back and forth, and I'm pretty sure that most of the time I spent working on it was sunk into trying to get this effect down. In the future, I'll have to pick up some more primer colors as well. I'm really excited to try as many techniques as I can and combine them in as many ways as I can. When all was said and done though, I had something I was proud of. Since I couldn't do glazing like I wanted to after Nick was kind enough to offer that nugget of advice, I made yet another compromise. I used some green grass flocking. The problem is that this stuff doesn't hold well unless you lock it down. I ended up using some Mod Podge off screen after recording this video, so unfortunately the glossy black grass that resulted didn't make the cut. God, double pun. After all of this work, I'm much happier with this dive into the shallow end of the Mini hobby. I think next time I'll try a more challenging model, and as it just so happens I have a Triarch Stalker and a Locust Heavy Destroyer waiting to get dolled up.